Bible study. I almost quit the church last Wednesday. I was doing such a poor job of teaching. I was ready to be okay. I'm failing at this. And then somebody came and said, I really liked it. So I was okay. I'll keep doing it. So when you come and join us here for Sunday school, that's a big encouragement to me. And I can't get enough of studying God's Word. I mean, I've been doing this for decades and decades, and you'd think I'd know it by now, but I just keep finding more and more and more things that I didn't know that are fascinating to me. So I hope that you're enjoying this. We're going to be in Revelation 17. So while you're looking that up, I'm going to just offer a prayer for us. Almighty God, I ask that you would strengthen our faith and our confidence in Christ, our identity in Christ, so that we would see ourselves as you see us, and give us wisdom and discernment to see the world around us as we ought to. And in that distinction, Lord, that we would have a certainty and a confidence about what the future will hold for us, and the knowledge of how things will eventually turn out, because you have made these promises to us and you always keep your promises. Amen. All right, I think the thing to do here is I'm going to read it all just so we get through it. I'd love to finish the whole chapter today, so that might mean going fast. And then I think we're going to do this. Do any of you have paper and pencil? Anybody? You do? Okay, so would you could be our scribe, if you don't mind? And just as we're working through, rather than me launch off on my little monologues too much where I'm constantly trying to tell you this is this and that is that, and let's just make a list of the characteristics of the two figures that we'll be studying here. A list of what we see about them, and then all together give some consideration as to what they are. Now that probably, I learned a long time ago, women like to discover things, so in general. So you give them this and you give them that, and then they finally rip open the paper, and they love to be surprised. Men don't like surprises. Men, you kind of got to tell them up front we're going for a drive. Well, where are we going? You'll find out. No, where are we going? You got to tell them. So for the men in the congregation, what we're going to be looking at here in chapter 17 is the great prostitute who is riding on the back of the beast. Chapter 18 next week will be the destruction of the great prostitute. So today we're looking at primarily those two figures, the prostitute and the beast. And the question that everybody asks then is, well, what are they? Who are they? And I just to tell you where I think I want to go with this, and I hope our scribe's list will help cement it for all of us by the end, but I think they're just different dimensions, different ways of looking at what is mostly the same thing. It's just different images to reflect and show us different aspects of it. So let's see if it bears that out. All right, chapter 17, please follow along with me. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly, but the angel said to me, Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. And as for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And the angel said to me, The waters that you saw, where the prostitute is seated, are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked, and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. All right, so a lot of stuff there. I mean, if you're just reading this, you don't read this for your devotions, right? But that was really edifying. But John is trying to help us see, I think, the world around us and the world that is to come, but our world too. This is not all stuff that's going to happen one day in the far, far in the future, but our world, everything. He wants us to see it a different way. So let's take a look at this. So it starts out, and Tim, you don't make big long notes, just try to get little bullet points as I give them to you, okay? So who's the one that's showing this to John at the beginning? It's one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls. Somebody who's really fast with their Bible, look up chapter 21, verse 9 real fast. 21:9.
Then came one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, and spoke to me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb.
All right, so you've got one of the angels from the 7 bowl judgments saying to John, Come, and I'm going to show you the judgment on the great prostitute. And then you've got an angel from the 7 bowl judgments, maybe it's the same angel, who later is going to say, Come, I'm going to show you the bride of the Lamb. I think that's very intentional here, right? What does that call attention to? That there's this great dichotomy, right? There's the great prostitute, and then there's the bride of the Lamb. And that's what we've been seeing all throughout Revelation, right? You get a mark on your forehead. You are either marked with the mark of the beast, or you're sealed with the seal. You have the mark of the Lamb. But everybody's got one or the other. Everybody's got one or the other, right? So you've got this great divide here, these 2 things that are constantly being contrasted and paired up with one another. So verse 1, this prostitute is, well, even before I get to that, so what's the first thing? What does the image of, or the idea of a prostitute conjure up in your mind?
Sexual immorality.
Yes, yeah, and mention specifically sexual immorality here a lot. The idea there is seduction, right? She is trying to get you to be involved in sexual immorality. So there's an appeal there, right? There's a desire. So one of the things that we want to know about this prostitute is that there's a seductiveness to it. Why would people follow this if it's going to result in destruction? It attracts people. People want it. People desire it, right? All right, end of verse 1. She's seated on many waters. Let's flip over to Jeremiah 51 for a moment. Jeremiah 51. Well, I mean, what's the picture of somebody sitting on water? It's a ridiculous image in some respects, except not for apocalyptic literature, right? So you've seen already as we've been going through this kind of literature that it's designed to evoke ideas and thoughts and symbols, not literal things. So what's the idea of being seated on many waters? Well, Jeremiah 51, if you've got the ESV like I have here, what's the bold headline for this chapter? Utter destruction of Babylon. This is a chapter about Babylon. And we won't read it all, but we'll look at a few passages here. Look for a moment at verse 7. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand, making all the earth drunken. The nations drank of her wine. Therefore the nations went mad. So this idea of Babylon is that she was getting the rest of the world drunk. Go to verse 13. O you who dwell by many waters, rich in treasures, your end has come, the thread of your life is cut. So Babylon, as you know, the river went through there. We looked at it. I got the wrong map up, but you remember we looked at it last week, I think. The river came through Babylon, and then they had all kinds of canals coming off of the river. So even though Babylon is not on the ocean, it's not a seaport, it's inland, but there would have been all kinds of water all around. So Jeremiah's picture here is that you dwell on all these waters, God is going to bring destruction to you. That's the prophecy of Jeremiah. So by John now in Revelation taking that same imagery, what should we think of when we read about this great prostitute? Babylon, the judgment that was decreed on Babylon in the Old Testament. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality. All right, now, here again, is this literal sexual immorality? Well, certainly I'm sure that's included in it, but what would that be if that's a symbol? What would this sexual immorality symbolize if you were to think of it as a symbol?
Apostasy?
Yes, that's exactly right. Did you hear?
No.
Apostasy. So that image occurs in the Old Testament a lot, where if the people were not faithful to their God and instead worshiped a false god, it was comparable to a wife who is not faithful to her husband and expends herself with some paramour, right? So the idea of adultery or sexual immorality as a symbol or an image in the Bible is symbolic of spiritual apostasy. So this woman, besides being a prostitute and being seductive, what is one of the things she does? She gets kings, or she gets people in power to apostatize. Second half of verse 2. She has the wine of sexual immorality. The dwellers on earth have become drunk, right? You could skip down if you want to the second half of verse 4. You see there where it says, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So we read in Jeremiah 51 about how Babylon had a cup. So this Babylon too has a cup. So not only is she a prostitute, not only is she seductive, she's alluring, trying to attract people into apostasy. But when she gives them this cup to drink, what happens to them? They become drunk. So when you're drunk, what happens? I was going to say, don't answer too fast. Are we all? I love you, brother. I know. But I mean, it's a lure, right? Why do people want to get drunk? Because it makes them feel good. So why would people want to get involved in this kind of apostasy and this evil and this thing that God's going to destroy? It feels good. It's attractive to them somehow, right? Verse 3, carried away into the wilderness. And so now he sees the woman, this prostitute, and she's sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. And it had 7 heads and 10 horns. All right, so we have seen this beast before. The thing we're learning new about it here is that it's scarlet, which was the color of the dragon, the devil. But this beast now is also scarlet. We read about it in chapter 13. So what do you remember about the beast? What was the beast? We said the beast is the symbol then of Antichrist. That everything in the world that is opposed to Christ. So individual people who are Antichrist or have the spirit of the Antichrist, or the spirit of the Antichrist as it moves through societies and through nations and empires, anything that causes worship of the dragon, who's the devil, instead of worship of God, anything that apostatizes, that draws people away from the true worship of God, that's all part of the beast. So this woman is riding on the beast, or the beast is what supports her. And we actually saw 2 beasts, you might remember, from chapter 13. Remember that? There was the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. This was the beast from the sea that was the Antichrist. And that indicated what kind of power as opposed to the beast from the earth.
Is that also Satan, the Antichrist? We're talking Satan?
No.
No.
Satan is the dragon. So we were introduced to 3 characters in chapter 13. Satan was the dragon. The beast, or the Antichrist, is the spirit within the world that is caused by Satan, that draws people away from God, and draws people away from Christ, and causes worship, knowingly or unknowingly, of the dragon, of the devil. But remember the beast from the earth, we call that the false prophet. That one, its power was power of deception, to deceive. But this beast, the beast from the sea, what was its power?
Attraction?
I have persecution. Persecution?
Yeah, outward power, political power, physical power. Yeah, power to harm, power to withhold, power to hurt people, political influence, political power. And so remember, we talked about seeing, I'm getting ahead of myself, but maybe it's okay. Where would we see this in the world today? Was it ancient Babylon? Yes. Was it ancient Rome? Yes. Is it Washington, D.C.? Yes. That was a quick yes. Is it New York? Yes. Yeah. Is it Rio de Janeiro? Yes. In other words, John's trying to get us to see that all the things in worldly or earthly power that are seductive, that are attractive, that we admire. Look at those beautiful bridges. Look at those high skyscrapers. Look at this program we have created to give everyone the vaccine, and educate all the children and feed all the hungry. How wonderful we are. John is saying there is a certain way of looking at it in which we have to understand that all that power, to the extent and in the way that it draws people's eyes off of God, is all part of the spirit of the Antichrist. It's trying to get us to look at our world differently. That we as Christians should remember we are not part of this world. We should not get too comfortable here. We should not feel too at home. Like this is a great, great thing that we're all a part of. I'm not saying don't be involved in politics, or I'm not saying we have to become Amish or something like that. But our way of looking at it should always be tempered by a realization that this is not us. We are different. So this scarlet beast, what are the characteristics of the beast? Well, it has blasphemous names written all over it. What would be a blasphemous name? How about, I am the King of Kings. Who's the only one that can say that?
Christ.
Right. So if some emperor says it, guess what? That's blasphemy. How about, we stopped the spread of COVID. God didn't do that. We did it. That's blasphemy, isn't it? So all these things that take the power and the authority of God and attribute them to people, those are all blasphemous names. So that characterizes the scarlet beast. It also has 7 heads and 10 horns. We'll get back to that because that's mentioned later further down. Verse 4, so now we're back to the prostitute, the woman. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet. Who wears purple?
Rich.
Royalty. And she's adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. So what does this tell you about her? She loves
Money.
lavishness, self-indulgence, excessiveness, all the beautiful things, the trappings that come along with it. That's all part of what has captured her heart, right? And she's holding in her hand the golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual morality. And then there's a name on her forehead, and it's a mystery. Remember in the Bible, mystery doesn't mean what it means for us. For the Bible, mystery is something that had yet to be revealed. That it's not something that's hard to figure out. It's something that God has not yet disclosed it. So God has not completely disclosed all of this. In other words, it's yet to be seen. But what is it? That written on her forehead is the name Babylon the Great. Now we know who she is, right? She's Babylon the Great. She's the mother of prostitutes and the earth's abominations. So which Babylon is this? Is this the Babylon back in Nebuchadnezzar's day? Well, it would include that, right? But it's not a literal city Babylon, is it? This Babylon then is the imagery for...
Is it a philosophy?
All cities. I think it's broader than that, although it includes that. So it includes all cities, all human systems, all human-built things that rob God of his rightful glory, that are in opposition to him.
I can't hold my tongue.
Oh, good.
It's Christian church prostitutes. It's the churches, the church prostitutes. Denominations and congregations who prostitute themselves.
So that's interesting. I don't know if you heard him there. The idea too of spiritual adultery, spiritual prostitution. Those that teach false doctrine. Now, I know when you taught this course, I know you used the Brighton book a lot, and Brighton is very strong on that. I tend to think it maybe includes that, but I don't want to limit it to that.
Well, no, I wouldn't either, but I'm just saying we have to look at the church.
Yeah. Anything that's robbing God of his rightful place
come in
So
and
false,
who
can be
you are,
false
we love you,
teaching.
We'll give you what you need.
Yeah.
You know, and spiritually.
In
Yeah.
other words, like they change their beliefs to suit
Yes.
their
Yes.
Their audience.
Yes. All right, so remember that this city Babylon is symbolic really then for all cities, for all human structures and institutions.
Wouldn't spreading a false doctrine though, wouldn't that be the beast of the land?
Yes, that's one reason why I'm slower to make the identification than Dr. Brighton, who's way smarter than me. I don't want, believe me, well, he's with the Lord now, but you always, when you disagree with a good author of a really good book who's a really good Christian, you should do so humbly. So I do so very humbly. He sees this as though the beast, the scarlet beast, is the beast of the sea, and that now the woman riding the beast is the beast of the earth, which would be the false prophet and the power of deception and false teaching. That she's now showing up here again, but in a different form, and that would make sense from the perspective that the Old Testament discussions of prostitution, symbolically speaking, are primarily spiritual. But I'm slower to make that connection because that's not what we're seeing about this beast here. This beast is all going to be political, which is the beast of the sea, and the woman that's riding this beast, she's not deceiving people, she's seducing people, right? She's not tricking them with false doctrine, she's getting them drunk. So I think it's probably included in this, but I don't want to. I want it to be broad. I better press ahead. So verse 7, so the angel is amazed when, I should have mentioned verse 6 too. Another trait of the woman, that she herself is drunk, or she is intoxicated with what? The blood of the martyrs. So the persecution and the suffering that people endure for the sake of Christ intoxicates this woman. So would that include the false church? It might, but I think that's also got to include then, how about the Chinese communists or Kim Jong-un, who puts Christians in jail. If you're a Christian, you go to jail. And so, by the way, so do all your relatives, everyone who ever knew you, so that no one will ever want to be a Christian again. Yet there are Christians in North Korea, but they're suffering terrible. We should be praying for our brothers and sisters around the world. But what is the power that does this to them? Well, communism, yes, but also it's happening here in America too, right? We're seeing the threat of greater persecution. So you can't link it to any one political system or another, any one particular historical leader. Was it Mao Zedong or Adolf Hitler? You got to say it's all of those. It's all of it. Verse 7, so now the angel is surprised that John is marveling at this, so he's going to explain the mystery. He's going to reveal the mystery here now. Verse 8. So first looking at the beast. The beast was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. Now, what do you remember about the Antichrist? That the Antichrist is trying to mirror or reflect Christ. It's robbing from Christ the glory and the attributes that belong to him. So Christ, you may recall, we won't look up the passages, but Christ is the one who is, and who was, and who is to come, right? So now the beast, he was, and he is not, and he is about to rise, but then go to destruction, right? So there's a little aping there of Christ. But what we learn about the beast, you could write this down, my wonderful scribe over there. is this idea of it appearing like it's destroyed or like it's gone, and then it comes back again. So it was, but now it is not. So is John saying, well, we're not, we had an Antichrist once, and now we don't have one, but we're going to have one at the end of time? No, the idea there is that the powers that are reflected by the spirit of the Antichrist, they continue to reoccur all throughout history. Just when you think they're gone, they come back again. Just when Hitler gets defeated, and now we think Nazism is gone forever, guess what? Some other country is going to pop up where it's going to be just as evil. If we could get rid of all of the godless communists and make those into nice democratic countries, now we think we've solved all the problems, right? No, it's going to pop up somewhere else. Everywhere where evil looks like it finally is suppressed and done with, it continues to reoccur. We saw that same imagery back in chapter 13 when it talked about the beast, right? Remember the beast, it said, had a fatal wound, and yet it recovered. That's remarkable because you don't recover from fatal wounds. Fatal wounds are fatal. But it's a way of saying it, and it looked like the beast was gone, and yet the beast came back. And that's what we will always see. We will always see the spirit of the Antichrist. We think we've got it, it's done with, and it's going to keep coming back. Till when? Till the end of history. Till Christ returns and this stuff is completed. The dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast. So who are the people whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world? Who are, what's another word for those people?
Non-believers?
Unbelievers, yes. And so what do we know about unbelievers and the beast? They love the beast. They admire the beast. They look up to the beast. They think this is a great thing. So who by implication then are the people that don't look at the beast that way?
Christians.
Yeah, those of us whose names are written in the book, Christians. So, brothers and sisters, we don't see the rest of the world the way it sees itself. We as Christians see the world differently. We recognize in the whole world something that is opposed and set against God. So we don't love this world too much. Verse 9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads, so now it's telling us what these 7 heads are that this beast has. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Now, what would that refer to? Mike knows. Yes, everybody would have known back in that day, because the whole known world for John was the Roman Empire. And so everybody knew Rome. And Rome is a city built on 7 hills. So that's a clear reference to Rome. So you've got Babylon riding on the back of Rome. How do you distinguish those? How do you say, well, this is this thing and this is something else? To me, see why to me it's all imagery referring to really the same thing, just different ways of looking at it. That whether it's Babylon, or whether it's Rome, or whether it's Washington, D.C., or Paris, or Shanghai, Hollywood, it's all the same thing. It's everything that is opposed to God and leads people away from Him. So the king, verse 10, they are also 7 kings. So the 7 heads have really 2 symbols. They symbolize the 7 mountains, or they symbolize Rome, but they also symbolize 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen, one is, and the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. Now, what did we say was significant about the number 7? We've seen the number 7 so many times in this book.
Completion.
What is it?
Completion?
Yes, so 7 becomes a symbol for kind of the complete number. So is this a literal 7 kings? Some people have tried to take it that way. So they sit down and they look at all the kings of ancient Rome. They go, yeah, this was Nero and Domitian, and they make all the list of kings. Of course, it doesn't work because you can't narrow it down to just 7 kings and say these are the ones. Some people look at it as kingdoms, so they go, oh, yeah, so that was ancient Rome, and then it was this kingdom, and the final one is going to be the kingdom of the literal Antichrist. Did you see the movie? You know, the guy that comes from Romania or whatever, or takes over the world. It just doesn't work that way. It's symbolic of the perfect number of kings are symbolic of power, right? Strength. So it's the symbolic number of the complete authorities in the world, whatever they are. So it's not just the Chinese communists; it's the Americans too. It's not every political authority, every source on earth of power and physical strength. They're all included in this thing. And so what's the significance of saying 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other's not yet to come? You can destroy your brain trying to identify these with specific people and try to figure out who they are. You just can't do it. That's a way of saying that it's including all the powers that have come up to that point, the majority of which has come. But it's letting us know there's still one now, and there's still one yet to come. In other words, how long is this going to last, that the forces of the beast will be in opposition to God throughout history, throughout all of time? Most of history is done with, but as long as history goes, we're still going to be facing this. It's always going to be the case. And then now it starts to get really crazy, right? Verse 11, as for the beast that was and is not, this is the scarlet beast that she's riding. It's an 8th king. so it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. So the only way to understand this is to see that he's talking there about all political power, all ultimate political power that's opposed to God. Verse 12, and the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. So there too, I think the literalists want to say, okay, so that's going to be Germany and France and England and other powers of the European coalition that are all going to support the Antichrist. And what's the significance of the number 10? We've talked about that too. Does anyone remember? Yeah, 10 is full. So when God gave the 10 commandments, does that mean there's no more commandments? No, but they're all kind of encapsulated in there. That is the law that covers everything. So these 10 horns is kind of the full or the complete number of all sources of political influence and power that are yet to come. And when they do have power, how long do they have it? Just an hour, right? So again, you wouldn't take that as a literal hour. Everyone understands. That's what that means is it's for a short time. Verse 13, they're of one mind and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They make war on the Lamb. So you see this thing moving toward final conflict. I'm down to my last minute. So just look over verses 15 to 18 there. What do you discover about this prostitute who rides on the back of the beast? What do you learn about them? Why, ultimately, they hate each other, right? Ultimately, they're going to destroy each other. So all the things that are represented by the Antichrist and all the things that are represented by the great seductress that are luring people, what ultimately happens to them? They feed on each other. They destroy each other. And God is actually supervising that, as you notice. God is the one that's superintending that they ultimately prey upon each other. So who destroys Hitler? Why, the Americans. But now if America becomes the next great evil superpower, who destroys us? I don't know. Somebody. And then somebody's going to destroy them. And so you see what it just keeps happening, that God in his power uses them to destroy themselves. There is no peace. There is no harmony among all these forces. The only thing that unites them is that they are opposed to you, because you belong to Christ. So all of this just to say that John is trying to get us to see the world differently. That you don't get up and read your newspaper and check your email and be like everybody else in the world who does that. That you wake up in the morning and understand, you know what? There is a cosmic conflict going on. That all of history and that everything that happens in the world ultimately is funneling toward this great divide. It's going to be going one way or the other. And we've got to see the world that way so we understand where we are and where we stand with Christ. All right, thank you so much for letting me go a minute late. I hope that wasn't too confusing. We never did get to finish our list, sorry. All right. Thanks, everybody.